Well, as the story goes, Gerald Ford was a newly minted candidate for the United States House of Representatives in June of 1948 when he made plans with a reporter to visit the dairy farmers in western Michigan's congressional district, 1st Congressional District, 5th, sorry. It was pouring rain that particular day, and neither the journalists nor the farmers had expected the upstart candidate to keep his appointment. And yet he showed up on time because he explained to the journalists, they milk cows every day, and besides that, I promised. Long before he arrived in Washington, Gerald Ford's word was good. During the 3 decades of public service that followed his arrival in our nation's capital, time and again, he would step forward and keep his promise, even when the dark clouds of political crisis gathered over America. After a deluded gunman assassinated President Kennedy, our nation turned to Gerald Ford and a select handful of others to make sense of that madness. And the conspiracy theorists can say what they will, but the Warren Commission report will always have the final definitive say on this tragic matter. Why? Because Jerry Ford put his name on it, and Jerry Ford's word was always good. A decade later, when scandal forced a vice president from office, President Nixon turned to the minority leader in the House to stabilize his administration because of Jerry Ford's sterling reputation for integrity within the Congress. To political ally and adversary alike, Jerry Ford's word was always good. And of course, when the lie that was Watergate was finally laid bare, once again we entrusted our future and our hopes to this good man. To know Jerry was to know a Norman Rockwell painting come to life, an avuncular figure, quick to smile, frequently with his pipe in his mouth. He could be tough. He could be tough as nails when the situation warranted, but he also had a heart as big and as open as the Midwest plains on which he was born. And he imbued every life he touched with his understated gentility. When we served together in the House of Representatives years ago, I watched from the back bench, I watched this good man, and even from way back there, I could see the sterling leadership qualities of Jerry Ford. And later, after I followed his footsteps into the Oval Office, he was always supportive. On the lighter side, Jerry and I shared a common love of golf and also a reputation for suspect play before large crowds. I know I'm playing better golf, President Ford once reported to friends, because I'm hitting fewer spectators. He had a wonderful sense of humor and even took it in stride when Chevy Chase had to make the entire world think that this terrific, beautifully coordinated athlete was actually a stumbler. And Ford says it was funny. He wrote that in his memoir. I remember that lesson well, since being able to laugh at yourself is essential in public life. I'd tell you more about that, but as Dana Carvey would say, not going to do it. Wouldn't be prudent. Now,
historians will debate for a long time over which president contributed most to victory in the Cold War. Few will dispute that the Cold War could not have been won had not Gerald Ford emerged at a tragic period to restore equilibrium to America and confidence in its international role. Sustained by his beloved wife, Betty, and to the children to whom he was devoted, Gerald Ford left the presidency with no regrets, no second guessing, no obsessive pursuit of his place in history. For his friends, he leaves an aching void. Having known Jerry Ford and worked with him will be our badge of honor for the rest of our lives. Early in his administration, Gerald Ford said to me, I get mad as hell, but I don't show it when I don't do as well as I should. If you don't strive for the best, you will never make it. We are here to bear witness that Jerry Ford always did his best, and that his best proved essential to renew our society and restore hope to the world.
When the President called me last year and asked me if I would participate in these services, I think he wanted to be sure that the White House press corps was represented. The writers, correspondents, and producers, the cameramen, photographers, the technicians, and the chicken. He also brought something else to the White House, of course. He brought the humanity that comes with a family that seemed to be living right next door. He was every parent when he said, "My children have spoken for themselves since they were old enough to speak, and not always with my approval. I expect that to continue in the future." And was there a more supportive husband in America than when his beloved Betty began to speak out on issues that were not politically correct at the time? Together, they put on the front pages and in the lead of the evening newscast the issues that had been underplayed in America for far too long. My colleague Bob Schieffer called him the nicest man he ever met in politics. To that I would only add the most underestimated. In many ways, I believe football was a metaphor for his life in politics and after. He played in the middle of the line. He was a center, a position that seldom receives much praise, but he had his hands on the ball for every play, and no play could start without him. And when the game was over and others received the credit, he didn't whine or whimper. But then he came from a generation accustomed to difficult missions, shaped by the sacrifices and the deprivations of the Great Depression, a generation that gave up its innocence and youth to then win a great war and save the world. And when Gerald Ford and that generation came home from war, they were mature beyond their years and eager to make the world they had saved a better place. They re-enlisted as citizens and set out to serve their country in new ways, with political differences, but always with the common goal of doing what's best for the nation and all the people. Gerald Ford brought to the political arena no demons, no hidden agenda, no hit list or acts of vengeance. He knew who he was, and he didn't require consultants or gurus to change him. Moreover, the country knew who he was, and despite occasional differences, large and small, it never lost its affection for this man from Michigan, the football player, the lawyer and the veteran, the congressman and suburban husband, the champion of Main Street values who brought all of those qualities to the White House. Once there, he stayed true to form, never believing that he was suddenly wiser and infallible because he drank his morning coffee from a cup with a presidential seal. He didn't seek the office, and yet, as he told his friend, the late great journalist Hugh Sidey, he was not frightened of the task before him. We could identify with him, all of us, for so many reasons. Among them, we were all trapped in what passed for style in the 70s, with a wardrobe with lapels out to here, white belts, plaid jackets, and trousers so patterned that they would give you a migraine. The rest of us have been able to destroy most of the evidence of our fashion meltdown. But presidents are not so lucky. Those David Kennerly photographs are reminders of his endearing qualities. But some of those jackets, I think that they're eligible for a presidential pardon or at least a digital touch-up.